Evolving digital landscape. For your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emmanuel Rose.
For joining me today, having a conversation today with Sam Drauschak, who is a process visualizer and mapper and a very experienced, computer scientist. I'll have Sam join us, and then he'll fill in the gaps for me. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anything you'd like to say about your background, about how we can give a little context to what your expertise is?
Sure. So I'm a process guy through and through. I'm a process scientist by title. And what that means is I consult, I study, I speak, I write. Everything I do is about process, and especially process work as it relates to process management, process automation. That's where I spend most of my time trying to figure out how, in this new digital age of business, how better process tools can help us get there and evolve quicker.
That's good. That's awesome. We all need the help. And typically the processes are amazingly human intensive and lots of distractions and inefficiencies, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Yeah, I feel like for all the advancements in technology, most companies are still struggling with sort of the basics of automation. And that's really a process challenge more so than it is a technology challenge.
For sure. It's like my golf coach tells me, he's like, too much Emmanuel, just simple swing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we make things way more complicated than they need to be. Obviously, in the last 18 months or so, generative AI has had a massive following, at least in the media. I've seen some things saying that only 18% of people have even kind of jumped in and tried to use anything generative. A lot of the companies that are local in this area that I'm in right now, zero out of the companies I've talked to are using them. So what have you seen in terms of how companies are implementing generative AI in marketing or sales or in communications?
Sure. Yeah, so in the bigger clients that I work with, I'm not seeing anything yet. There's a lot of discussion still about AI, but like you would expect with larger enterprises, it's fairly slow on implementation. There's still just so many aspects of it that are new, and bigger companies are typically slower at adopting these type of technologies.
Sure.
As far as in sort of the entrepreneurial space, the small and medium business space, I have seen a lot of the generative AI use in my circles. People are dipping their toes in, especially helping them write emails, helping them reformat presentation slides. So when you talk about the sales and marketing use case, especially, I think on a person's desk perspective, it's definitely helping them crank out first drafts for some of the tedious things they have to do. Like if I'm preparing bespoke materials for a client demo, that becomes so much easier in sales, right? When I can have generative AI say, take this that I wrote for this client and write it for this client.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of use cases that at the personal level are quite compelling, is what I've seen in like the small, medium business sense.
Yep.
But as far as replacing whole people or functions or departments or big parts of marketing and sales, I haven't really seen anything in that realm yet. And I think like most things, that becomes a more complex use case and a little bit more difficult to tackle.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen the same kind of thing where there's individual productivity is being enhanced by the tools, right? Being versus replacing an entire marketing department with a software suite, not happening yet.
Right. Yeah, and like you kind of mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people-to-people interconnectedness that we always like to downplay. Even in small marketing and sales departments, if we use that as a use case, the amount of just reporting out to your manager for simple things like reading the pipeline, but making sure you're prioritizing what you need to do and how you need to do it. I mean, there's still so much there that you don't have AI able to read the context and be the glue that puts a lot of these functions together.
Yeah.
So besides some of that one-off stuff, it's a more complex use case to try to bring AI in comprehensively that way.
Well, it's interesting. So has AI impacted the work that you're doing with your clients yet?
It's impacted only in that people are very interested in using it if they can. So I would say all of my work is really, a lot of it's geared around automation and scaling, particularly through automation. That's a lot of the process work that I do for clients. So anyone who's looking or paying attention says, well, this generative AI, the new wave of AI, is the future. It's the highest and most intelligent form of automation. So we want to use it. So it's impacting my work in the sense that everyone asks, well, can we use AI for this? Is there an AI product that we can bring in house for this?
Right.
And, a lot of times my answer has still been, you haven't even used the best practice SaaS tools properly from the last decade. So we're not going to be able to skip over that step and then all of a sudden just be able to leverage generative AI any more than we could have used the best automation offering from 10 years ago without doing any pre-work. So in that way, it hasn't really affected my work on a day-to-day basis. It's just more affected the conversation and the desire and chasing the shiny thing in the marketplace. But material impact, I haven't seen anything in my work yet.
Well, let's dig in a little bit into automation and what you're actually doing for clients. So are you working for manufacturing? Are you working for SaaS companies? I mean, where are you seeing your work happening right now?
Sure. So I actually have worked at a lot of marketing contexts, but also just anything digitized. Digital services is tending to be the clients that need the most process help. Like your first instinct, oh, process, you're probably working with manufacturing. It's actually counterintuitive, but manufacturing and tactile industries, they've been the ones who have been developing process strength for the last, 5 or 6 decades. So they actually have generally pretty good capability around process and they understand it. Where process is really struggling is people who've digitized rapidly in the last decade or so.
Okay.
Agency models, financial services, legal services, things where it used to all be on paper.
Yep.
And now it's all in the cloud. It's globalized. You're working with global workforces. There's virtual offices. Anything that basically went digital is sort of my main niche. And it ends up being a lot of service companies.
Sure.
And when we talk about automation in those spaces, some people may think, oh, automation, just moving things into computers, but a digital workforce is already largely automated, but that's really not the case. So like when I define automation, it's reducing your cost of decision-making. That's its purest definition, right? Which is today I have people doing it. If tomorrow I rebuild the process so cheaper cost resources are doing it, or all the way down to a software or a robot or an AI doing it, that would be your ultimate version of automation. Yep. But you can automate something by, if you do it today and you successfully have an intern doing it tomorrow, that's automation, right?
Sure.
That's better structuring your decision criteria and your logic and pushing it down to a lower cost base. So that answer is what I help clients with. Largely people want to automate. They want to scale through automation. They want to reduce their cost of operating. It's saying, what is viable for you? What are the solution options? Redesigning processes so that you can harness that cost savings. That's a lot of the work that I do for clients, and mostly digital service clients.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I could see how attorneys or insurance agencies or those sorts of clients that deal with a lot of pieces of paper, and then all of a sudden they're scanning everything in now, and now they can't find a freaking thing, right?
That's exactly right. Or it's all just email. Like everything is driven through email, and it starts digital, and then it travels through 5 or 6 stages of its life cycle digitally. And people have trouble when you lose your tactile senses. Digital operating models are tough on the process side, because if I ask you, hey, Emmanuel, what's your process? You can't see it on your desk anymore. You can't see the people that grab it from you. You can't see who gave it to you and where it's going. So it's very easy to lose track of your process. And then if you tell me, well, how do I automate that process? The first question is always, well, what is your process? And most people can't answer that question anymore.
That's amazing.
That's where it starts.
Yeah. So you are like a highly educated person that solves the most fundamental problems.
That's very kind of you. That is sort of what it's like. It's really solving that problem. It's the problem nobody wants to solve. That's what a lot of my work is, right? They want the AI first.
Yep.
Sure. They say, I've got this problem on the floor. I know this AI can solve it for me. And I'm saying that the problem you have to solve is identifying what your process and your operating model is first, and then we can talk about AI or other solutions. So that's a lot of the work.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess, just a high level process of how you go through the decision making of finding a piece of software to as a gap or a bridge in a process. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. Everything is always going to be roughly the same, right? Which is map your as is process in a good amount of detail. So like mapping your process is fundamental because I need to know what you're working with, how many resources, what's your cost structure,
Yep.
and what's your revenue. Your basic business fund, like basic business profile, essentially of a particular thing. And then it's validating the problem. So what problem are you having? What do you actually need to solve? And then it's always designing the to be process. So it's fairly simple at that level, right? As is a to be process. And then when you talk about, well, what solutions do I use software? Do I hire more people? Do I use advanced and like even artificial intelligence? Then it's always an ROI conversation at its most basic sense, which is, well, what solution do you need? What kind of revenue do you have? What kind of cost structure do you have? How long do you think that this solution will be relevant? So then it's really just identifying constraints and deciding, because an AI automation at this point is a 6-month, year, 2-year project.
Yep.
Do you have that kind of runway? Do you have the appetite? Does that cost structure make sense? What are the benefits you're expecting? And that's just a pretty boilerplate conversation that you just have to be reminded that, well, you want to embark on which solution? Well, I'm going to try to give you the solution that's most viable, addresses your problem most directly at the most ROI. And that's going to be based on your size and the complexity of your market and all those things. Yep. But it's always going to be bespoke based on the client and based on doing that sort of discovery to future state progression.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so I guess you tend to work more with mid-market companies or Fortune 1000? I mean, what's kind of your sweet spot for client base?
Sure. So we're a small consultancy. So I'm engaged in software tools and then on consultancy side. On the consultancy, it's honestly mixed. We usually hold a pretty even number of like Fortune 1000, like large scale enterprise and like one or two of those at a time. And then trying to make sure we're serving also the small and medium sized market, employees and revenue up to like 5 million, 10 million, 50 to 100 employees, and trying to make sure we're able to serve those folks too. But I wouldn't say there's a natural inclination to do either or. They all have the same process problems. They're just at different stages of their growth. Yeah.
And how did you end up in this niche of problem solving these processes? What led you here? Yeah.
I think it was mostly happenstance. So in my career, I early on fell into process work through a biological background, biology and chemical engineering. And then I moved that very early on in my career to an insurance company where they were looking for process engineers for insurance, which was sort of a new thing at the time. This is back in the early 2000s. And that's where I really fell into it. I just fell in love with it. And one of the things that really got me in here was because at that time in the early mid 2000s, digitization was just really kicking up.
Yep.
And you could see that all the process methods that were born in manufacturing, you've got Toyota, you've got GE, you've got Motorola, the big ones that were really doing all this process stuff in the 50s and 60s. None of it was translating. They were trying in digital services to do that translation and trying to bring those concepts into digital spaces, services companies. And it was basically just a blue ocean academic problem. So I landed into that problem early in my career, and I've been trying to solve it ever since. And I've just fallen in love with it. I mean, and it's only just grown exponentially as companies become more digital. So there's this big need, and there's not a lot of maturity. So it's been a great space for me, and mostly it's just been my own passion to solve like a pretty large market problem that kept me here.
No, that's awesome. And then, who are some of the philosophical cornerstones? Like you mentioning Toyota, and obviously Demings would be in that category, right? So where's your where do you go for your fundamental philosophy?
Yeah, you named a few of the big ones. So Toyota has the Toyota production system, which you've probably heard of now as Lean, is sort of the Western version, Lean method. Right. That's a evergreen, wonderful base of just like process logic. And they've still been applying those principles all the way until the present day. And then Motorola was the one who engineered Six Sigma in the 80s. And Six Sigma is another very popular process methodology that draw a lot of historical roots from. And that actually ended up getting picked up by GE and really popularized in the 90s and 2000s. So they're like the Six Sigma company. So there's Lean and Six Sigma. And then, like you said, Demings, the plan, do, check, act cycle. And there's a few other like smaller methods out there around how do you just have a good project life cycle? How do you manage your operations? So there's a lot of rich literature and history. But in a way, the process industry has stagnated academically in some ways, because a lot of those prolific guys, they started in manufacturing and tactile settings. We don't have an analog in the digital world. So that's sort of where we're at, right? We can draw on the people you asked about, but there's not anyone who's really standing up and saying, this is how digital companies should be looking at process. This is the methods they should be using. Yeah. It's still just the best guess, whichever consultant you hire, they just do the best they can with it.
And so then where are you drawing your inspiration for problem solving at this point, Sam?
At this point, it's a lot of experimentation in the field. And like I said, I would never want to de-emphasize all the people we just mentioned. I mean, I study them extensively. They are still principles that you could practice your whole life and never really internalize the depth of some of the work that, our predecessors have done in this space. Yep. But I think at this point, it's a new frontier. Like a lot of people now with technology, since the turn of the century, everyone's experimenting, right? We'd like to say we have models, but to a certain extent, it's just anyone who's willing to say we don't know. And here's my best guess. And we're just out there experimenting. And that's why the process scientist moniker is the one I've taken on, because I'm doing a lot of experiments and I'm writing about it and I'm trying to get other people in the conversation. But truly, it's just discovery is the honest answer. Good fundamentals and then new discovery.
Well, that's great. Well, let's bring it down in from the philosophical realm into a tactical realm of, what would a marketing manager or a CMO, or how would a person in that role start to assess their problems based on your experience, or not problems, the challenges?
Sure. So I always tell folks it's mapping your process first. And that's what I kind of mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
You want to have a good as-is document. And especially if you're like a CMO or you're running a small agency or you're doing marketing teams, writing it down in any way you can, it's a very transformative and revealing exercise. So I'm not even going to say, hey, be intimidated by using this tool or that tool or this language or that language. Write down your processes from end to end. What are your people doing? How do your campaigns function? What do your funnels look like? Like step by step, mapping customer journey. It has a lot of different names, but you need to get down to the tactical level of who's touching it and what system and what are they doing? And then you have to be able to draw lines that connect those things in a story that makes sense. And if you can do that, you're going to learn a lot about your business. So I always say start there.
Nice. Current reality, right?
Current reality. Yeah. You don't want to conflate it with, oh, I'm trying to solve this problem or I'm trying to make the future state. Yeah. All you have to do first is level set your mind on exactly what's happening now and just be able to look at it and apply your common sense to it. It's a big step that a lot of people miss, and I would highly encourage it.
I love it. I love the simplicity of it. But as you're describing it, I'm thinking back and like how so many things get revealed just by, oh, this is our current reality. This is not what I asked to be the current reality, but this is what the current reality is.
Yes. Right? Yes, that's exactly right. People are always trying to avoid their current reality, so they don't want to pay a lot of attention to it. They're always trying to change or fix it. You got to figure it out first. And you also might be surprised what you don't know, even on what's happening right now with your colleagues or your subordinates.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, where there's they either have added or edited steps and is causing some of the breakdowns right in the process. And I guess that's why you're involved in the mapping software. So you could tell us a little bit about that software product.
Yeah, of course. So the software company I'm a part of now is called Truval. And we are starting with a process mapping product that's supposed to be making process mapping easier and more accessible for people. Nice. So it really follows this conversation we've been having, which is my belief is if people weren't as intimidated or the cost generally was lower to create good process documents, to collaborate with people to create process documents, we'd all have a better sense of what our business was and what we need to do. So Truval is trying to meet that use case. It's trying to make it easy so you could actually whiteboard live in a video conference and do process maps. So you could draw process maps without having to figure out so many things. Like our process mapping software, for instance, has 2 shapes in it. That's it.
Nice. Yeah.
It's not an open canvas with 50 options and you have to create your own template and you have to create your own colors. If you use it and your brother uses it and your mom uses it, the map should look roughly the same. Yep. So we're just trying to make a simple but very robust process mapping solution for people who are not process people, because we think everyone needs to build that muscle. So that's really the basis of the company.
I love it. Yeah. And so besides giving a visual representation of a current reality, what are some other features of it? Truval.
So right now, that's like the first go-to-market release, which is here's how you can make better process maps. But the fast follow to your question is analyzing that. So we'll be able to press a button and it will be a digital consultant and say, here's where your process is weak. Here's where you have some opportunity. Like basic stuff, right? That you might not think. There's a lot of handoffs here. You might want to look at the risk in that. You've got a lot of density of systems, different systems by different people. So if I was looking at a map as a consultant, I'm trying to bake that into the tool so small and medium businesses especially have access to that consulting knowledge that they might not necessarily have access to.
Yeah, no, that is a gift. And I want to thank you for adding that in. That's cool. It seems like a good use of software too.
Yeah, a lot of the process software you might find out there is in the service of automating a particular thing, right? Like put your process data in here and we'll make it faster, we'll make it this. We're really trying to build this as a process analysis tool so that you will be better equipped to make business decisions for yourself. So really the idea of a digital consultant, trying to automate myself, essentially.
That's cool. And then like, let's say it's a 15 or 30 step process. Is that canvas stretch all the way across all of them, or do you end up with multiple pages, or how do you approach that?
This app is built around infinite canvas. So your canvas can stretch out to infinity, and then you can identify domains is what we call them. So you can say, this is phase 1, this is phase 2, and then you can chunk it out how you want. But we're kind of doing away with the idea of, okay, we have to break it into pages because we're in the digital world now. So you have infinite space.
There's no page.
Navigating the model.
That's awesome. So we have in marketing speak, we'd have all the way from prospect all the way to upsell, cross-sell, and institutionalize, right? And all the 75 steps in between those.
Yeah, and especially if you want to do your whole operating model, this software really is great for that, because imagine you wanted to sit down with every person in your team to map that out, the whole life cycle you said, the whole operating model from end to end. Yeah. You could start on a whiteboard with that first person. Now with this tool, you can start with that whiteboard in a virtual conference and just pick it right up where you left off and just keep adding to it with multiple people. So you could feasibly build that whole thing out just in the span of, 5 to 10 meetings for a small agency or whatever it is. And then you have the whole thing down on paper.
And are people able to write on it simultaneously, or is it just one person as a designee?
The latter right now. So you have like one facilitator, and we're not there yet where there's like multiplayer or anything like that. But we find with this process work, you normally don't have multiple people writing in the same process map at a time anyway, but it's meant so you could facilitate a room, but not so much multiplay.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Wow. Well, it sounds cool. I saw that you have a free trial offer, so I'm gonna get signed up on that myself, because we have some things to sort out as always, and it sounds like a great tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone listening, the free trial, if you go to the site, you can sign up, you get a free map, you get a free infinite canvas to do whatever you want with. And right now we're very young. There's a feedback button there. It's going to go right to my desk. So if you want to communicate with me or you want anything to see in the app, we're at that phase where we'd love to have your engagement, you and anyone listening.
That's cool. And that's truval.com. Is that it?
truvle.com.
Oh, VLE. Thanks. Appreciate it. .com though, right?
Yes, .com.
Okay. Well, Sam, how else would people get in touch with you besides through the comment section on Truval?
Yeah, for sure. So you can also just reach out to me on LinkedIn or sam@truval.com. I love just hearing from people personally. So if you have any process questions or you just want to talk process, I'm always available for that. And I'm the only Sam Drauschak online, really. So if you punch in my name, I'm the only one that's going to come up. So I'm pretty easy to find. You can reach out to me however is most comfortable for you.
You dominate Google for Sam Drauschak. That's awesome.
Yeah, not a lot of Drauschaks online, just by happenstance. So
yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time this morning and going through the discussion about how to dissect and simply approach situations and finding solutions for that, Sam. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. You have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.